transparency? No? Okay. It used to do it, but so now we're recording.
Yeah.
So if anybody actually watches this, this is Joseph. He has been kind enough to have a conversation with me, and he just really provided a heartfelt apology, and we didn't have that on recording, but I want that to go on the record that he is coming into this with an open heart. And that being said, I'm getting a little emotional. Shoot,
Oh man.
already. It's just people are so quick to attack on social media. But like, damn, man, thank you. Fudge, I was not expecting this. Okay, here's my introduction.
Go for it.
Thank you for agreeing to do this. One reason I was pretty insistent on getting this on record for my whatever this YouTube channel is because you use the public forum to chastise me. And I figured it would be a beneficial to share any resolution attempt we seek on a public forum. The best way to beat bad ideas is with better ideas. Considering other people agree with the post embedded within with the point embedded within the post I shared, my progress towards de-radicalization might be able to be extrapolated to other people. I've been told many times you're better than this. So it hit really hard. So that's why I overreacted, and I'm sorry. But in this climate of what I wanted to talk about was the culture wars. People are extremely, extremely divided, and it's getting worse. And I'm going to screen share.
Okay.
Just so people can know, what the post is. So here's what I posted. Just on my Instagram, but shared from this character Zuby, who is he's known for being a troll or like a culture war perpetuator. So I'll just leave it up for like another second. So anybody, and then I'm going to, whoops. Okay. I want to share this now. Sorry, I'm still practicing on this, but for yourself, I don't know if you researched, and I'm going to actually ask you a question in a minute. But here's a quick definition of a culture war. I don't know if I'll just let people read it, but anybody knows what it is. So I was going to give you an opportunity to, introduce yourself, your background, and any sort of way we can begin this conversation. Thank you again.
Introduce myself. Well, I mean, I'm not really anybody. I'm just a person, man. I'm not like, I don't have any higher education other than, we took massage together, and I just have a lot of experiences. I think I'm a thoughtful person. I think I try to think deeply about things, about issues. And that's probably about, I do, I guess right now, like what's been, what I've been looking into lately is a lot of skepticism, logical arguments, fallacies, trying to see, trying to find a way to see through some of the lies and some of the deceptions that we see through social media, through mainstream media. Uh, so I guess that's where I'm coming from. But as far as like, I'm just a normal person, man. I'm just a average Joe, if you will.
Okay, gosh dang it. Your humility is sincere. And so Joe mentioned we met at massage therapy school, which was, a place where you'd think someone with an open heart and who's not so angry would go, right? But that's where we met. You said something else. Shoot.
Yeah,
I feel like we're almost on the same path with looking into that skepticism and the logical fallacies and seeing
yeah,
what the media is doing. And so when I talk about the culture wars, it's so perfect because like we are a living example of how it has divided people who
yeah,
are friends.
yes.
Sorry, emotional eating. Fuck.
Yeah.
So can I ask what you thought I was trying to convey by sharing that?
Okay, so there's stuff going on before I said anything about that. So that's kind of what prompted me or got, this stuff's been already brewing in my head because of all the can't talk about cancel culture and some things. It's like I do understand that there is an idea of cancel culture that is happening, but I think some things are being called cancel culture that aren't actually cancel culture. Um, but anyways, my point was is I have a friend who's very liberal ideologically, like probably like you. It doesn't claim to be Democrat or Republican, doesn't like either one, you know. Um, but they're liberal in their views of like social uh, freedom to uh, be whoever you want to be. They're not sexist, they're not homophobic, they're not racist. They're open to all that kind of stuff. But anyways, so I started seeing posts by them about um, that our childhood was going to be erased, or that what prompted them was the disclaimer about the Muppet movie. There's some disclaimer put at the beginning of the Muppet movie, and
Sexism or something like that.
yeah, yeah, maybe there was. I didn't even see the disclaimer, but to me, that's not canceling anything. They're still showing it. It's just I think they're trying to be inclusive. Um, and the same thing with like Dr. Seuss, all that. It's like, is anybody like, if a company wants to uh, take that route, I think they should be allowed to, um, without having any backlash for it. um,
Well,
so
so can I?
go for it.
It's really funny. It's really funny. It's actually perfect. It was on my list to ask if you believe cancel culture is a thing because I've had conversations with people who just say it's not even a thing, or they'll concede and say it's deserved. And so that's the concern is what I was just realized is these words they're becoming so charged that there's an attached stigma when they're applied. And
Yeah,
the reason I shared that post is because I'm concerned about cancel culture and I'm concerned that um, it's being weaponized to silence anyone who doesn't agree with the narrative, the mainstream narrative. Um, so when people are called sexist or bigoted or homophobic or are, uh, there's so much energy attached now that people are afraid they're going to lose their jobs, and most people are already living paycheck to paycheck and struggling and stressing, and so these are just weapons to divide people. And so I hate that it's happening, and those posts are I don't know. That's I should have asked a question, but because is it necessary? Let me. Do you have a?
okay. I know his like thoughts are flying, but yeah.
Okay, so well, do you support censorship?
Uh, do I support censorship? I'm not really okay with government censorship. Um, but I'm okay with if you want to censor yourself. I think we've always censored ourselves. There's nothing new to that. Um, because I don't think that everything needs to be said that you think necessarily, especially in certain situations. in certain places.
So there is a flip side to freedom, which is responsibility. So you're given a
Yeah,
freedom, but you should use it responsibly.
exactly. Yeah.
Um, I had a question. Shoot. Oh, okay. So I mentioned the word de-radicalize because I would consider myself radicalized. Um, when you say the state or the government shouldn't censor, yes, I agree. But then when you see how intertwined our tech companies are and our government, they're the same. It's some people would say we live in a technocracy. And so the state is censoring people. People are being deplatformed. Um, I I don't want to be associated with conservatives. I am way more anarchist than stupid traditional
Yeah.
conservative.
Yeah.
Um, but they're being unfairly targeted, and it leads to this bigger picture that the bigger point I'm trying to make with this is that cancel culture, especially as it's being weaponized to silence anybody who speaks out, is just a prelude to violence. It's a prelude to things like the gulags and the re-education camps. And this is where I'm being honest and being radical and saying I'm really worried about the future. And I'm really just thinking that there are so many people who are brainwashed and
Uh, yeah, there's a lot there.
yes, I'm sorry. That this is why Instagram would not work as well because
It's okay.
you
Yeah,
need
it's
to,
okay.
yeah.
I just have a hard time, like sometimes when I'm on the fly, I like to think about what I'm trying to say. I actually made a bunch of notes, and I don't know if I can bring them up on
Oh,
here.
let me see if I can give you. Um,
Well, I don't want to post my notes, but I
oh,
just
okay, never mind. Oh, I see what you're bring them up so you can see them.
so I
Okay,
can see them. But I
understandable.
was wondering, there used to be the idea of boycotting, you know, which is kind of never really worked out that great. Um, I think the idea that, and this was kind of pushed by conservatives a lot, is like if you don't like something, then don't buy it. If you don't like that company, then just don't shop there,
That's the
and,
laissez-faire
and fuck
solution.
your
Yes,
wallet.
yes.
And if they go, and the idea was like if they go out of business because they didn't um, make the sales or they didn't, then so what? But now it's kind of turned around on. It seems like it's turned around on them. Um, it's like, well, if you make a racist statement or you make some off-color statement, then you're not going to be able to get a job now. And so they have a problem with that.
And that's like the fear. And so people are bottling this up. And I need to have a notepad so I can write things down
Yeah.
because you touch on things that I want to talk on. Shoot.
If we're talking about censorship too, I mean, I was just looking up things about book ban. Uh, Most of the books that have been banned or are heavily challenged have to do with uh, like social causes, race, homosexuality, and they're challenged by conservative groups mainly. Um, and so it's interesting to me that publicly or on the media we see Tucker Carlson, we see people on Fox News talking about how uh, the right or the conservatives are being canceled, but they've been canceling things for years, and heavily. Um, like in the public, it's not in the media, it's not being, um, talked about there.
So
Does that make sense? It's
I
just kind
think
of like a double standard.
yeah, so what I think you're saying is that the old conservative message used to be like vote with your wallet or make decisions with your wallet and then let the market decide. And what the left has now done, I'm sorry, the left, but what now the new method is to not vote with your wallet, but to punish people. So it went from like sort of indirect punishment of I'm not going to do business with you to direct punishment of I'm going to go out of my way to
Yeah.
harm your
Yeah.
business. And so I agree, like Yelp and business reviews and all these things should exist. And you should, if you have a bad experience, be able to post a bad review. But it just seems
Yeah.
like this concept of brigading, where it's you just rally a bunch of people for a cause to screw someone, that seems unnecessary. And so I agree that the right, I don't want to say started this because this has been an ever going war, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just a different sort of evolution of what the right used to do. And that's all that the
Right.
stupid two-party system does, is just alternate and flip-flop between the tactics and methods they use
Yeah.
to manipulate people. And so bringing back the culture war concept, I'm seeing the conservative side, they're learning to play the game. But it's scary because escalation is inevitable. And so when you
Right.
equate words and violence, people are going to begin justifying actual violence against people who are committing what are perceived thought crimes. And so where do you draw the line? Somebody might be homophobic. Does that mean they deserve to get beat up?
No, I don't think. No, you don't deserve to get beat up.
So I'm this is for dramatic effect, but I'm going to say it. If a redneck from the South calls someone a fag, does he deserve to get beat up for that?
Uh, does he deserve it?
Would you
I
beat him
can't
up?
say if he does, but
Would you? Yeah, would you
no,
beat him up?
I'm not a violent person either. So every individual is going to have to, you're going to have to take chances with that, I guess, with every individual.
What should
Just like,
the
I
legal
mean,
system
they'll
do
come
in
out and
that
say, hey,
situation?
if you
Oh,
say something about the flag, or you say something about, you know, don't be surprised if you get punched in the face.
so I accept
It's
both
yeah,
of those. How should both of those like? I I don't think you should be. I don't think it's justified to punch someone in the face for disrespecting the flag, but that's a whole different story. But I also don't think you. I don't want to say the F word again, but it rhymes with flag. I don't think you deserve to get punched in the face for saying that either. To the bigger point,
right.
um, to beat bad ideas, you beat them with better ideas. And let's kind of connect the thing, because I admitted that I am angry, right? Um,
Mhm.
so anybody who would use that F word is likely angry. They have hate in their heart. And so we're just a growing ball of hate in this country. And so again, I'm trying to de-radicalize myself and anyone else who is angry and full of hate. I have a few questions. Do you believe anger is something that primarily drives Trumpism?
Um, okay, so I was just watching this thing about why liberals are winning the war, or are winning the culture wars. Um, the thing with conservatism, I see, is it's trying to hold on to old ideas, and when new ideas, well, there's so much deeper than that. Not just old ideas, but it's very rigid. It wants to kind of make everything very box, stay right here, and we want to save what's right here. And liberalism is it doesn't necessarily want to save anything. It wants to be able to grow, or keep moving outside the box. Um, and so this is the struggle. That was the whole thing with the "Make America Great Again" uh, slogan, because conservatives consistently feel like they're losing something. Um, by allowing gay marriage, they thought that they were losing uh, the idea of a man and woman being the only way things are right. But after that, slowly Republicans are allowing homosexual people in their either in to be elected or like I think about like Dave Rubin. He's heavy conservative, who's gay, openly gay, and uh,
Hold on.
and so
Dave
slowly
Rubin
they
would not
start to.
identify as conservative, though.
Uh, he considers himself like a classic liberal.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, but
I know
I
his
mean,
work. That's, yeah.
he's he's not conservative. See, that's the thing. So he's not conservative in the sense of socially conservative. He's more fiscally conservative. He likes to see a smaller government with less power and less money flowing out of it for stupid stuff, you know. Um, but
So
he is a
much stupid
very,
stuff.
very small, like stupid stuff like
No. There's so much of it. I was making a joke. I'm sorry.
oh, okay. Yeah. Um, but Dave Rubin, okay, he socially liberal in the sense of allowing gay marriage or he probably has some other more liberal ideas, but he sides with conservatives on ideas of well, he would consider freedom of speech.
So I would
um
say Dave Rubin is more liberal than Joe Biden. I'd make that
uh
claim.
Maybe I don't
And that's
I
like the
personally
irony
like.
of the Democratic Party right there. Someone that you're pegging as a conservative is still more liberal than the current Democratic president. Oh man, thank you.
Yeah. um
And so I don't want to, I always poop on the Democrats, but that's a whole different thing. Sorry.
it's okay. I don't like Joe Biden. You know I wanted Andrew Yang, of course.
And so like that's a huge reason that like I also took it personally because I thought we were like Yang Gang together, and I was like I thought we were ride or die, but that whole thing just yeah. So
Well, I guess that's what I said. I've seen a lot of people that are it, it's hard to say, like, what am I trying to say? Because,
like anger was kind of the general theme.
well, putting people in a box of being liberal or conservative, it's like, I would consider myself liberal in some areas, but I'm conservative in some areas too. So it doesn't, and probably more conservative than conservatives in some things.
A term that I haven't heard in a while. We're gonna bring back identity politics. It's just
Yeah,
another word for this. It's I trying to identify with this specific box, and then the other boxes are no longer opponents you beat with ideas; they're opponents you beat with clubs.
yeah,
So, like an example of my radicalization that I'll be honest with, I think the mainstream media is horribly inaccurately covered Antifa and the whole protests throughout the 2020, while overblowing not anything, but most things that conservatives done. So there's clearly a bias.
mm,
And I'm just afraid of that machine getting smaller and smaller. And I've been reading about the history of communism, and the parallels are becoming scary.
yeah. Why do you think that? Because I hear this too, like liberals are in control of universities, liberals are in control of the mainstream media, liberals are in control of all these things, but yet conservatives make up at least 50% of the country. So why haven't they? Why haven't their ideas progressed or become mainstream if their ideas are so good? Why? Who is pushing all these liberal ideas and making them more mainstream? I guess I'm who do you think that?
So that's no, that is a very common talking point, that the universities are becoming increasingly insular towards leftist ideology, and people who do not align are often afraid to speak out, or they don't get tenure, or they just don't rise up through the ranks, or they're ostracized. And we're seeing more and more examples of these people. And so we're seeing I love the yin and the yang symbol. That's why my logo is that because it just can be applied to almost everything. We're seeing the tide shift and people are coming forward
Hmm.
and speaking out. And so as the tide shifts, also taking into consideration escalation, that's where my concern is. And so I admit that I'm angry, but I also, yin and the yang, for as much anger as I have in me, I have as much love that I just want
Yeah.
to share with the world. But it's like,
Right.
how right now? Like when
Yeah.
people are so divided, and they're intentionally divided by, and this is where it sounds crazy, but by our institutions, by our media, by our ruling class, the people with money, power, and influence. And it's a game to them. There really is a 99% and a 1%. And it's funny because I'm not an Occupy Wall Street person, but I do believe the majority of the people are being screwed by like the government and our ruling class, the oligarchy. So I should
What
learn to ask questions after these
what
rants, but
would be the intent? I guess what I'm asking is like, so what would be their intention behind being more liberal, instead of trying to be more rigid and be more conservative? What I mean, who's gaining, or who's who's making that happen? And why would they choose liberalism over conservatism?
Fabianism.
Fabianism, what's that?
I have just recently come to learn about it. Like I said, I'm researching the history of communism. It all goes back to Marxism. So the idea that the workers of the world will unite to create this social communistic utopia, right? And it
Hmm.
sounds crazy, but I promise you, or I'll bet you everything I don't have in life, that as the future progresses, it's going to become more and more relevant. So I'm often like called a conspiracy theorist. I'm called crazy. And so that's another reason that I'm worked up. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me. But so this Marxist idea that the you can create a world of equity of each according to their ability, to each according to their need. That is literally the communist creed or the Marxist creed. And so, embedded within this culture war is an effort to implement these ideals. And so, when you hear all this talk about equity and all of this social justice crap about be less white and the manufactured racism that we're experiencing, it's all to dismantle the West. And once the West has been dismantled, they can usher in this totalitarian, not totalitarianistic, that's a different thing. They can usher in this totalitarian regime and obtain power. It's always not always about power because Foucault is a different thing, but it's often about power. And
Hmm.
the tides are shifting from the ideals of freedom to the ideals of communism, for lack of a better word. And the universities are the ones pushing it because they're the ones who are often not working manual labor jobs. They're the ones. Karl Marx never worked a day in his life. If you
Hmm.
research his history, he
Yeah.
leached off that Engels guy. So he never actually worked. And so
Right.
the universities, the higher up you go, because backbreaking labor sucks and you're underpaid. So the higher up you go in universities, the more often you find people who have not actually worked in their life. So they don't understand how the real world works. And so if these people rise to the top, they're going to want to surround themselves with people like them. So these people rise to the top and then their bad ideas infiltrate down. The slow march through the institution starts within the education system. And this is how it's happening and how it's going to take us out. Um, Thank you. Sometimes I just need to rant. Like
Yeah. Go for it.
I miss hanging out with people. Like in a way, this is like
Yeah.
hanging out with friends. I don't even want to talk about the PDemic thing because yes, but and so that's kind of one of my theories is that people who don't work for a living think that it's easier to create a utopia than it is.
Yeah. I can see that.
And then there's like the whole philosophical part of okay, actually I wrote down this question. Do you believe there is a difference between a man and a woman?
Do I believe there's a difference between a man and a woman? Hmm. Yeah, this is something that I would say, okay, in my life experience, I used to be very conservative. I was in a fundamentalist church for 8 years of my life, by choice. And so I was very conservative in
Talk about
ideas.
radicalization. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, and took a while to get past some of that. And I think, and I had a problem, then I slowly progressed into like a little bit more liberal, a little bit more liberal. And finally, I'm probably swinging pretty hard liberal right now. Um, but it took me a while to think about the whole issue of gender. And I think that um, the idea of a man, uh, what what makes a man, or what makes a woman a woman? Is it purely just uh, physical? Is it purely just testosterone and estrogen? I think there's a lot of things we don't understand about the human brain. Um, it's a very complex and very uh, intricate uh, machine. But do I believe there's a difference between a man and a woman? I believe that uh, there's a perceived difference between a man and a woman. I believe that there's. I used to think we should break everything up into masculine and feminism, or masculine and feminine, but even that's kind of like that's a tough one, man. Uh, because I definitely believe that there's a difference between maybe that man and that woman. Uh, can I ask you? Okay, let me ask you that question again. What do you consider uh, is a man? What does that mean to be a man?
I believe that there is the idea or the biological proof of sex. We'll say sex, biological sex. Okay.
Male, female. Yeah,
XX,
I'm okay.
XXXY.
Yeah,
I believe also some variations exist.
yeah.
That being said, the social construct of the identity of man, woman, as it's assigned to those XX and XY, there's an infinite amount of gray, the yin and the yang. So you have a little bit of masculine and a little bit of feminine. Everybody has a little bit of a balance of both. So, from the deviation of the scientific standpoint, and that's part of the movement, is to um, erode the validity of the scientific community as a whole. Because if you question your scientific community, everything else collapses. Because there are people who are currently saying there is no difference between men and women.
Right.
Socially, it's of gray, yes. Scientifically, it's not. And it's really funny. People think I'm anti-science, but I'm not. um, so to talk on the connecting again, the general topic of the culture war,
Mhm.
this idea is being pushed by an elite, malevolent few because they know that it is so divisive that it will distract the people. So there are so many, we've touched on a lot of different things that are like these superficial conversations that are hugely controversial right now, that are dividing people, that 20 years ago it wasn't like they were conversations and they were being had, but
Right,
they've
right,
escalated. So
right.
and so we've
I
seen
think,
this escalation. I just want to wrap up real quick. One more
yeah, go
thought
for it.
is
Go,
that
go
in,
for it.
in saying all of this, I love everyone. I embody,
Mhm.
or I'm trying to follow the life of hippie Jesus, as he's being called. Um, so the non-Christian one. And so I support people who want to identify however they want. I really do. So having this
Mhm,
conversation, I'm not at all trying to take anything away from them. I'm just trying
mhm.
to raise awareness to how easy it is to divide people.
You make a good point there that I think that uh, this debate or this discussion about gender is, you said something in another video. I was watching some other videos that you did,
Thank you.
and so you said something like somebody can make an argument out of any situation or something like that, and I think that could be what's happening is somebody comes out and says, uh, gender doesn't matter, or it's like there's a thousand genders or whatever. Well, then the other side takes that and then blows that up and says, they're destroying our way of life, or they're, and then they actually create uh, more turmoil, and I don't know, again, like I don't know if that's a centralized plan or anything. I think that's just like I think that's just people, taking stuff way too far or taking it out of context. I think that social media plays a huge role in a lot of this misunderstanding. Um, you would think that having the ability to communicate with people instantly should help us come to some sort of middle ground, but it actually just ends up being a bunch of memes that don't really, get to the bottom of an issue. And a lot of hate and anger from opposing sides.
And so I made a comment earlier that is controversial. I've made a lot, but specifically I said it seems like so many people are brainwashed. And so what it feels like you just distilled there was like the programming, the left and the right programming executing itself like a software program. It's within a
Yeah,
human, it's embedded. And then, oh, this happens. So this response happens and then it escalates.
it is. Yeah.
And I don't want to attack anyone when I say they're brainwashed, but like when I talk about this a lot, like the mental, physical, and spiritual health of the average American and the idea of self-actualization. Most of us are overweight, in debt. We're nowhere near fulfilled or happy. When I go out in public, I'm so depressed because I just don't see bright, happy people anymore. And I understand we're in a pandemic, but like
Yeah.
it's different. Like
Yeah.
it's different. And like we've agreed on all these like things that are dividing people, and we just don't know like why or like yeah, well,
Well, like I think I was in one of my notes there that the effect of social media on these discussions, on the ability to communicate. I think people not only just the idea of social media, but there's also the whole algorithms and all that stuff, that go along with feeding people what they want to hear, keep people in an echo chamber. Um,
so
it's difficult, man. It's difficult.
well, there's a word that I knew of this word, but the definition of this word hit home when I went to massage school, when we were in massage school. Agency, like having agency of your mind, your body, and your
Mhm,
soul. When we're talking about these social media algorithms, so you have a brainwashed person who's programmed,
mhm.
so they don't have agency of their mind, and then they're exposed to the algorithm. It's almost like a guarantee they're going to get the response that they want.
Yeah,
And so we
yeah,
loop back in the idea that we're being ruled by kind of these technocrats or these oligarchs or just this ruling class. Like, I'm sorry, but I do not think Nancy Pelosi is a good person. I think just and so, but Mitch McConnell isn't either, to be fair. Let me poop on both sides.
I think, yeah,
So
I would agree that like there's a lot of shit, but go ahead.
So
Sorry.
power to the people. How do we bring back power to the people when it's kind of like, how do we do it, man? How do we raise awareness? That's what we got to do. But how?
Yeah,
Because all we're raising is fists and
right.
anger. And it's so funny because I feel like this is the dystopian future that was like joked about in my teenage years. And I just thought it was a joke or like a bad sci-fi idea, but it's real
Yeah,
life and it's
yeah,
depressing. Like when you dig down into the bolts of all of this, like something I think about a lot is finding meaning in life, and you have to find it away from the nonsense of the circumstances you cannot control. So this environment
Yeah.
we've been given, this corrupt environment we've been given, I have to find meaning in life outside of the fact that we're screwed, and it's so hard to do. I don't know if I had a point. I thought I did, but it's like,
It took me a while to find, to kind of feel like I found myself. And that's what I did for years. You know, that's why I got into the fundamentalist church that I was in. I thought that was giving me purpose. I thought that was giving me a meaning in my life, structure. Um, I thought I was finding structure and meaning that I wasn't finding that I didn't have when I grew up, because I grew up in a alcoholic family and had a lot of issues with my dad, and um, and so I finally, I think I realized, I started to become thankful and realized I just needed to be thankful for what I had, even if it was not much, uh, and even if it was bad, like even be thankful for the bad experiences in my life to try to, um, so I'm getting off on a tangent there.
no, it's perfect. It,
And purpose and meaning. Agency, defining agency. Um,
and
yeah, and I think I finally like going to massage school, like fucking opened up my eyes, man. That was like uh to myself, to like my realization of myself. Um, there was all the things I liked in it. There was the science and there was the uh anatomy and physiology. I loved all that kind of stuff. I've always been like into nature, uh and studying organisms and loving all that kind of stuff. And then there's also the caring and the nurturing part of my nature that really it appealed to me big time. And I when I was in that church, there wasn't that. It's like there was this love of God, and there was this love of the person that's sitting next to me in the pew. But when it came to like the people outside the church, we talked pretty bad about people outside the church. And so you couldn't make a connection with just average people. You couldn't. I couldn't be friends with anybody outside of that group. Um, and so now, I feel very much like what I guess what I've always wanted to be. um, there's still a lot of things I want to do, but yeah, I feel like I've found the ability to define myself and the ability to love myself and you know
I'm
find
just
purpose.
writing notes because you're
Make
hitting exactly
purpose.
what I'm sorry.
But no, I was done.
I sorry, I was like writing notes and I fudge. I thought you were stopping because you fudge.
No.
You hit on something just really that is so perfect, because what I was thinking through my head was agency, anger, and Trumpism. But just to build on that, the ability to find yourself.
Mhm.
I think a lot of anger from the Trump supporters is driven by the fact that they don't feel like they're given an opportunity to find themselves,
Mm.
via the pressures of the church that they may or may not actually agree with, be it the
Mhm.
financial stress of doing, like being underpaid and having to get by,
Right.
um, or from, yeah, those are the two big ones that I can think of, or just like the government, right? Not being able to smoke pot. There's another one. So I, which is surprising. You'd think conservatives would be more in support of it, freedom, blah, blah. Anyways, but so I really think that anger is a huge thing fueling Trumpism, but it's also fueling the social justice warrior side of things too.
Mhm.
Um, And I think, so we talked about Andrew Yang, a lot of it is economic. And I think for a lot of directions, economic strife is another way that we're being pitted against each other.
Yeah.
Here's a controversial thing I want to say. Another one I was thinking about today, bringing back the male female trans issue.
Hmm.
Imagine being a conservative individual who is working 60 hours a week at a back-breaking job to just barely get by and put your family through school or whatever. And then you are seeing that transgender individuals are having various surgeries paid for by tax dollars or by insurance dollars, et cetera. Connecting the ability to be who they want to be component, this person who's miserable and physical pain and stressed about their family is seeing someone being given the opportunity to be who they want to be, and they're resentful or
Hmm.
angry. And I support trans people, I do, but I think that it's the money is what's one of the biggest drivers that drive people apart and then can radicalize people.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that spending and the whole, yeah, financial issues are probably our biggest, uh, because you
But
got one side that's saying, "Hey, let's just pay for everything," and then the other side is like, "I don't want to pay for anything." I mean, I don't want the government to use my tax dollars to pay for anything other than bare necessities, I guess.
and then there's another side that says, fuck the government, let's overthrow this bitch. Um, well, there's a
Yeah.
few sides that are saying that, but that's kind of the common theme, though, is the government and our institutions having more power over us, like the banking institution. Like if you are in a lot of debt, you're a debt slave.
Yeah.
um it's just we've lost our sovereignty as a people, as individuals, and it comes back to the fact that I like consciousness. I like psychedelic drugs. I think they're cool.
Mhm.
You can talk about them if you have input, but I've been fascinated with this idea of consciousness on
Mhm.
like a universal scale, but then also on an individual scale. And talking about being brainwashed and not having agency, it is a suppression of someone's general consciousness.
Yeah.
Another word that we could use is like a synonym, like awareness. So you can think
Mhm.
of consciousness as like awareness almost. So if you're
Mhm.
aware of your health, like your diet, and you're aware of how much exercise, and you're aware of so you know how like quantum is now being put in front of everything, like
Yeah.
quantum
Yeah.
physics and quantum chemistry and quantum biology. You can just put conscious in front of any social subject, and then it's been evolved. So like a good example is conscious sexuality,
Mm.
right? So it evolves the conversation from either monogamy is perfect or polyamory is perfect, right? It allows for a conversation around the spectrum that exists between the two extremes. But we're not having conscious conversations. We're having conversations at the extremes
Yeah.
and so what really started all of this was like our consciousness is being suppressed by all the institutions and mechanisms that we've been talking about. So like the media, the government, friggin' the banking system.
Um,
I don't have a question. I need to get
yeah.
better. This is thank you. This is practice because there's like a question in here. It's
Uh, yeah. I don't know. I guess I don't experience. Um, and maybe this. I don't know. Maybe this was like. Uh, I want to say part of my privilege, I guess. Like I just don't experience a lot of oppression or um, yeah. I don't know. I don't experience that. Like um, but I know that it happens. I know people are experiencing it. Um,
If people are intentionally being manipulated by propaganda, is that not a form of oppression?
Um, well, I think we're,
Especially if that propaganda then leads to them being overweight and unhealthy.
um,
Or
wait,
if that propaganda leads them to live sexual lifestyles that are not actually in alignment with who they want to be. And so that's what I'm talking about is like, if you don't have agency of mind, is that not, and it's an intentional act, is that not a form of oppression?
okay, if you don't have the agency of, like, you haven't,
You don't have the agency of mind as a result of intentional propagandization.
hmm, hmm.
So let me then, I guess, ask, how many people do you think are self-actualized? Like the average American, do you
Uh,
think they're self-actualized?
I don't think very many people are.
Why is that?
Um, it kind of goes back to, it's very deep issue.
I
It could go,
agree.
it could go back to like, I mean, we could go back 10,000 years, you know, because I was watching a video that you were talking to, I don't remember his name. You're
Adam or
talking about
Kyle?
Adam, yeah, uh, talking about traumas. Something that happened to me in a psilocybin trip. Uh, Before I took this trip, um, I was watching Gabor Mate. Do you know who he is? Uh,
Yes, he stresses me
Gabor
out.
Mate. Yeah, this is yeah. Well, it was just one interview that I'd watched. The first time I'd ever uh, heard of him or anything, and but some of the stuff that he was talking about really hit home for me. Um, Talking about childhood traumas and generational trauma, and that's something that's really stuck in my mind, especially like after that trip, because I had just watched this interview with him and Russell Brand. He was on Russell Brand, and then I took these mushrooms and I was sitting out in the backyard, and I was so over overwhelmed with emotion and like realizing some of the stuff that happened to me as a child and how it's affected me throughout the rest of my life. And um, I also began to realize that this happened to my parents, and that happened to their parents, and that happened to their parents, and it's and they didn't intentionally do, like, my parents didn't intentionally do anything to me, you know, to mess up my life or to screw me up, you know. They just didn't understand. And so at the same time, I found understanding, I found forgiveness, and I started to approach life with a different perspective after that. I think a lot of people don't have that chance. They don't have that experience. They don't have the ability, you know, to see outside of their situation.
Do you think the fact that psilocybin is not legal is a contributing factor?
I definitely think that
And then reefer
certain,
madness, when we're talking, I was just
yeah,
talking about propaganda. So let's just give an example of reefer madness. People call me crazy. There's some proof. I didn't want to out you. So I tried to, like, when I brought it up, but
definitely,
since you've
yeah,
brought it up and you're comfortable talking about it,
yeah.
I think psilocybin will save the world. It's not a cure, but it opens you
No,
up. It gives you an opportunity to look at things differently, among
I
many
definitely
other
think
things.
that we need to have it at least at least decriminalized or legalized for therapeutic use for sure. Um, we definitely need to allow it to be researched. You know, um, that that's again another thing about like the whole thing about uh, marijuana being illegal. Um, that
Fuck
stems
the
from a lot of
government.
what's that?
Fuck the
What'd you say?
government.
Yeah, partly. Yeah, I mean,
That's the best response. That's a grandpa response right there. It's like you
I
don't want
mean,
to dismiss
partly.
me, but you want to give me credit. That was a perfect response. Yeah, partly.
Well, I definitely agree that, like, what was his name? The newspaper guy that, Hearst,
Yeah, it
was it
sounds
Hearst?
familiar. Yeah.
William Hearst, or the guy who, like, basically got it made illegal back in what, 1937 or something like that.
So it couldn't compete with, yeah.
So it couldn't compete, right? And so what did he do? He used race to make it look bad. He's like, there's these, black jazz players are trying to get your white women and stuff, so they're going to get them. They play that whole,
It's true. I'm laughing, but it's true.
yeah. And it's like, it's sad, because some of that, again, it's not necessarily like a planned thing. Like, it's not a centralized plan. It's just something that's developed because people are afraid of, like,
But
losing something again. He was like afraid that he would have to be in competition.
and so he used his power and influence to suppress this plan.
Yeah.
So it is a plan. And
Well,
you have to have friends in the media, you have to have friends in the government, you have to have connections, and he had them and he made it happen.
yeah, but he probably had a lot of people that agreed with him that it was, maybe even agreed with the whole racial thing, and
As
didn't
a
even under.
result of propaganda, so
Yeah,
did not have agency of their own
right,
mind.
right. And then once that starts, then once they made it illegal, then it gets into the minds of people that, oh, well, it's probably illegal for a reason. you know it's bad for you. And so it just it was bad. Don't do that. And for years, it just, nothing could change past, after that. um I honestly was surprised when we finally legalized marijuana. It was crazy. I didn't think I'd ever see that in my lifetime. But now things are changing. Uh, yeah, I don't know where I was going to go with that, but
Um, I kind of had a note and then I forgot it, but it I don't feel less radical because it's like we agree on so much. Um, I do feel less angry though because I feel heard, which is really nice. Thank you very
good.
much. Um, and so I wasn't trying to put anyone down by posting that. I was trying to raise awareness to this
Mhm.
thing that's going on. And so I even commented, like, or in a video I made to address this issue, that I have to play the game a little bit to change the game. So we have to raise awareness. So it's like we have to play the game to change it.
Yeah.
And so that's why I shared it. And
Well, hey, if you were trying to get a reaction, you got one. You
I I
got me.
did. You
You got
also
me on the
got one.
line. Hook, line, sinker.
You got one. But I do admit that words have power. I'm not at all
Absolutely.
dismissing that. Yes, I do admit words absolutely have power.
Yeah.
Um, and my concern is that these powers are being amassed to be weaponized en masse against any dissenters. To bring back my conspiracy theorist stuff,
Mhm.
that the bigger and more powerful the government gets, like uh, taking away the guns. It
Yeah.
is absolutely absurd that we would give
Right.
up our guns. Let me ask you, do you support gun ownership?
I support gun ownership, and I probably am more libertarian i- in that field. Yeah.
Okay.
Me, like, I've even talked to conservatives and said, I'm so pro gun. I don't care what you, if you can afford to buy it, buy it. Like if you can afford a tank, get a tank, man. Like if you feel more uh, secure that way, then by all means, that should be your right to self-defense. And then somebody, a conservative, said, "Well, with a permit, though, right?" And I'm like, "What the hell? What is?" Yeah, I'm like, "Okay, well, you're not really that conservative, okay?" Um,
You're shocking me.
yeah, uh, yeah, I believe in the right to self-defense, whatever that means to you. It doesn't. I don't think we should define that. Um, that as far as the Constitution goes, too, I have some problems with the Constitution, but that could be maybe another segment.
So it's funny. I'm not at all a traditional or conservative person. I think we should get rid of the Constitution and redo it. I like the
Yeah,
title, the Articles of Humanity. I like that.
yeah, that's a yeah.
It's very much inspired by Andrew Yang, just that humanity first sort of thing. Because like, one reason people are very afraid of communism and afraid of the increasing socialism is, and to connect it to this, the universities that are trying to dismantle the West, they're trying to say that everybody is equal, and they're trying to say that the only reason that there are disparities in outcome are because of social constructs. And so it negates the idea that people have different capacities and competences and
Mhm.
capabilities and proficiencies. And I don't believe yes. So that's another concern that people have. Shit, how did we even get here? I'm sorry. We're talking about like uh,
Okay. Um,
gun
Constitution.
ownership. Oh yeah, we're talking about the Constitution, the Articles of Humanity. So yes, to bring it all back, like I like universal basic income, but I hate the government, so I don't know how to make that work. Because, but like not communism. So I like the idea of the starting
Yeah,
place instead of the
yeah,
like raising the floor instead of lowering the ceiling. There we go.
right,
Universal
right,
basic
right,
income raises the floor. Communism lowers the ceiling.
right. Yeah,
Because people do produce differently. Fundamentally, people will produce differently. That doesn't mean
absolutely.
one person is better than another, but the materialistic culture that we live in kind of creates that implicit narrative.
Yeah, that you have to do something that's productive and like not just productive, but you have to be a cog or you're not. Well, okay, like the whole thing with I had a problem with Joe Biden right off the bat when early in the campaign because they were asking him about UBI, and he's got this old mentality that you have to have a job in order to have purpose or meaning in your life. And I'm like, that's total bullshit. Like, I don't need to be a cog in a wheel to have purpose and meaning in my life. What I need is to have the ability to do what I want to do. And now that could be uh, problematic if all you want to do is sit around and play video games all day and never you know do anything with your life, I guess. But most people, I think, after a while, they're gonna get to a point where like I need to do something, you know, worthwhile in my life, and they can't do that if they're working, for minimum wage. At yeah,
And this is a big source of my anger. And
lost
then
you
I
for a
talk,
sec.
oh, hello, can you hear me?
You're kind of breaking up there.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yes, again, to bring back the Trumpism and anger, because so many people, but it's anger on both sides, are underpaid. And you mentioned you
Yeah.
want to have the ability to do what you want. That makes me think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So
Hmm.
to pursue self actualization, you need to have your basic needs met, your
Yeah.
food, your water, your shelter, and then having some friends and some family. And so that also makes me want to think of like there's a movement in within, I keep bringing back this Marxist movement to dismantle the family structure. And so there have been resources put out saying that the family structure is racist. And that's absurd. You talked about people not having meaning and purpose in life. That begins to be installed at the family level. That's one of the many reasons that families are important, because if your family fails you, there's another layer that should be taken into consideration, which is the community level. I love that word community. I hate communism, love community. One is voluntary, one is murder.
Right.
um,
Right.
so there are layers to this social fabric that we have. And so we shouldn't dismantle the family structure. We also shouldn't dismantle the idea of individualization. So that's another thing about Marxism, is that you're not an individual. You're
Mm.
just a unit of the state. And so it's very anti-individualistic and very collectivistic. Um, so let me wrap this up by asking you a question, because
Okay.
I'm getting better at my notes. Do you believe Joe Biden has agency of mind?
Uh, I can't. I'm going to say I can't speak for everybody, so I don't know. I mean, what what do you think that he doesn't?
I very much question.
Okay.
Yes.
Um.
But I also just
hmm.
question his morality and his policy and his, you know, history of sniffing people. So there's a lot to
uh,
question about him,
yeah.
but I'm not qualified to make a cognitive diagnosis, but yeah.
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I would say that he probably is self-actualized. He probably feels that he's at his highest potential. Um,
Yes, because he did not regret that crime bill.
well, yeah, I mean, I'm just
it takes it
saying,
takes a lot of pride to make a claim like that.
yeah,
So he still has pride.
uh, yeah. I'm, but people can change.
Has he
I'm not
changed?
saying that he has. I'm just saying that it is possible for people to change. I think that when you look at somebody's past voting record, or you look at somebody's what they did in college or what they did in high school, and then like, is that the same person? 50 years later? I don't. Um, you know, maybe they've learned something. Maybe they thought that that was not a good move. You know, um, I'm
We
not defending.
should. Oh,
Get me wrong. Uh, I don't think that he's. I don't think that he's the person that we need. Um, uh, I prefer that over Trump, I guess, but it's like it only by a small margin.
yeah, the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, it's like, dude, I mean, I get that. The thing with like the presidency is it's disheartening, because it's like somebody that you think, oh man, this person, they really get it. They got new ideas, like again, going back to Andrew Yang, I just thought like, man, these are fresh solutions. He's like he's not just addressing a problem. He's trying to create a solution for the problem. He's trying to think through it, or trying to at least talk about stuff. Whereas, the old guard, they're just, they're going to say what they need to say, uh, and behave the way they need to behave to get to the point, where they can, I guess, be secure, you know, feel like they've made it. Um,
So, do you believe the swamp is real?
uh,
Not not any.
I
I'm not
think this
saying.
is probably real because we don't have certain things in place to drain that occasionally. to make sure that we clean it out, like the whole term limits and stuff. I don't understand how somebody can be in politics their entire life, be Congress their entire life. Uh, but then again, is there anybody running against them, that's winning? Like that's so somebody doesn't get in Congress just on their own, they have to be voted in. So,
which takes money.
which takes money.
Where do
Yeah,
you
I
get
mean,
money? From your friend Jeff Bezos.
yeah, it's yeah. I think money is definitely something we need to discuss, and people are afraid to discuss that because it starts to get nobody wants to talk about class. Um, like it's in the media and stuff. Nobody wants to talk about classism or
It's funny because identity politics is huge, but like nobody cares about poor white people. That's what fueled Trump. At the bottom line, nobody cares about poor white people, and there are still more poor white people than. Anyways, I'm sorry, but yeah, no, you're right. They're not talking about class, or if they do, it's always a class. It's always like a very specific ethnic class. It's not just poor people; it's poor black people. But like, there are poor white people too.
yeah, they're definitely. I think
That's because it's easy to divide people. If you have poor white people and they're only hearing about poor black people and reparations, they're going to be angry.
right, right. Why should they get something, when I'm over here suffering? Um,
I love all people, poor, rich, all ethnicities, just for the record. But you're right. They're not talking about class, or they do it in an exclusionary fashion, which is ironic because the ideology is supposed to be inclusive, but they're intentionally trying to exclude the straight white man. I have a theory on that because he is the most likely to rebel against such a movement. So what do? You neuter him socially, you neuter him financially, you do everything you can to make him the devil and the enemy. And so when I posted that thing that words are becoming violence, it's because this is the prelude to attacking straight white men. I would bet everything I don't have within 5 years, we're going to see a dramatic increase in attacks on straight white men. Yes, I will acknowledge that black and minority people are disproportionately affected by the police. That's why I hate the fucking government as a whole. I'm not discrediting their movement at all. But that's why I'm so worked up and so concerned, is because I really feel like this is moving towards a direction of actual violence and escalation.
it could be. It already is showing. I mean, like the whole thing with the Capitol riot and all that, and all the protests last year, but riots last year.
Peaceful protests.
Yeah.
I was sorry. It's
Yeah, it's a difficult because I'm not really qualified to speak on a lot of that stuff. I need to think about that a little bit more.
so we can maybe, you said something, bring back class, and then we need to talk about
Mhm.
money. How do we figure out money?
Oh, well, yeah. So I think we need to talk about, like, this is going to sound. I mean, this isn't a fully thought out thing. So I'm just going to just spitballing ideas here. The idea, we have a minimum wage. Why don't we have a maximum wage? Why
We
isn't there?
used to. And do you know what happened? Andrew Yang talked about this. That's what created the healthcare system, because employers couldn't pay
Uh,
people more. So they began offering other fringe benefits, health insurance. And then we got that horrible machine of health, you can just attach big to any industry. And then it's like
yeah,
corrupt and broken and unconscious. It's unconscious. The
right.
big industries have become, but it's a result of the necessity of the industrial revolution. So we talk about big industry. The industrial revolution built us this badass modern world that we now need to learn how to share better with everyone.
Yeah, yeah, and that's I think that's where it comes down to. It's like there's this fear of the rich are afraid that we're trying to take all their trying to take all their money away, or I'm like, we
Well, Elizabeth Warren is, so
well, I mean, like, uh, if you have money and like a large amount of wealth, it's much easier for you to produce more wealth. You know,
yes, I
if
agree.
uh, i- if I'm starting from zero, okay, maybe someday I could get there. That's the whole American dream. Is oh, I could be a billionaire someday. But the chances are probably not, because how many billionaires are there? There's not that many. I mean, so comparatively to how many people there are. Um, but that's just kind of this hopeful, that's what conservatives really bank on, is that you know, they're going to be wealthy someday. You
But
know,
I don't ever think it was as optimum as it could have been for the worker. But I think over the last 50 to 70 years, it has become increasingly less optimum for the worker and more optimum for the owners. And
yeah,
so I agree with the grievances of the leftist ideology. I just do not agree with the solutions. The solutions are scary. Communism has a proven track record
yeah,
of tons of deaths, like actual murder. People will say people are dying because they can't get their insulin. I want to have that conversation, but it's slightly different. Um, Murder is bullet in the back of the head of a pregnant woman. That's communism.
Eh,
S- Um,
uh, the only problems with any of these isms, socialism, communism, capitalism, uh, is people. It always comes down to, in capitalism, you got greedy people that are going to amass wealth, and wealth equals power, and so they'll become powerful. If you have pure socialism, you're going to have people, elected officials, having the power, and they're going to concentrate wealth and power to themselves, which not far down the road is communism. So in that sense, I I agree that we need to find a way uh, to instill socialist ideals without forcing them by government. That makes sense. Like, I think that's what you're trying to do. Is it like to have equity or unity and all of these things, just be organic and not be uh, government force. Like, you have to deal with this person, you have to do this thing, or
and that is the world that is possible when we can stop having the polarized conversations and really begin to have
yeah.
the ones where there's nuance and gray. And so, shoot, I need to take notes because um, I agree we need to figure out the money thing. But consciousness again, I'm bringing that word back. And so uh, all of these isms can be corrupted by unconscious people. And so you talked about your faith or your when you were in the church. To bring back, I always talk about the mind, the body, and the soul on a spiritual level,
Yeah.
upgrade our collective consciousness. And so the culture wars are preventing the conversations that are necessary from that
Mhm.
evolution to happen. Um, and so we've hit so much common ground because we've cut through the programs of the algorithm and of our social media. We do need to figure out money, and we need to recognize that people will produce differently. And so actually I did a reading from the book Black Elk Speaks. It's on my YouTube channel.
Oh
um,
yeah.
um, because it's really profound in one of the passages where they talk about the fact that the best and strongest warriors, their duty was to feed the people who didn't have husbands or the people who didn't have sons.
Hmm.
So like elderly or just all kinds of things. And it was just this beautiful thing because it was like it honored the fact that there were better warriors, but it also gave them the responsibility to look out for those less fortunate.
Right.
And so we need to
Yep.
stop denigrating people who are major producers, and we need to like not discourage people from wanting to produce at their maximum potential.
Hmm.
But we also need them to understand that they have a responsibility to give
Right.
back
Yeah.
to the
Right.
planet and the community that has allowed them to flourish. And so that's why it's like there should be a meritocracy or a system that rewards production, but it shouldn't be solely based on that. And
Right.
the fact that we can reward it and optimize people, it will allow us to build that floor. We have the resources to build a social floor for humans to flourish, but we're not having the conscious conversations. One
Yeah.
example: population control. I'm not
Yeah.
advocating for eugenics, but I do feel like if we don't do something soon, we're going to have just too many people. And I'm not like, I have all the love in my heart, but like, let's just be conscious about our reproduction.
Right. Yeah, I think conservatives are really messed up in that regard, as far as uh, not wanting to promote contraceptives, not wanting to allow abortion, um, but then not wanting to take care of anybody after they've been born either. So it's a
I,
that's one of the
I
problems with
agree.
conservatism. Yeah.
I do not want to be associated with conservatives, anarchists here. I agree. Conservatives are douchebags. Although I do also want to make a point that I'm hearing rumors that there are people on the liberal side that want to advocate for abortion past certain thresholds. And I do think there is a point. There should be a
I
point.
think yeah,
Um,
I agree. Yeah,
and
there's a point there.
but that
Uh,
conversation's being silenced. And so again, the culture
yeah,
wars. Here's another topic that is dividing people that is conscious and nuanced.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. So
I
actually, let me
think it's
bring up back the Democrats for a second,
okay.
and the culture wars, because Tulsi Gabbard,
Hmm.
she is like, I love her. I understand she has a questionable past, but I feel like the way she has atoned for it, specifically around the LGBT community, is actually beautiful because it shows that you can be de-radicalized or deprogrammed in a bit. She
Yeah.
evolved and it seems very sincere. She also advocates for universal basic income. And her fucking drop kick on Kamala Harris was priceless, not to mention her attacks on the Clinton war machine. She's a
Yeah.
true progressive hero, but she's not a leftist Marxist hero. And that's why they squashed her, because they don't
Yeah.
want the Leninist, Marxists, the communists. There's so many words you can use. So please just use them all interchangeably. They don't want the progressive world. They want the communist world. And that is why she was silenced.
Mm.
She was
Mm.
hands down the best besides Andrew Yang.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. I would have seen either her or Andrew Yang.
But why were they silenced? Because they're not the progressives that the far leftists want.
Yeah. Um,
You have the best responses because you're not dismissing me, but you're also like,
no,
being.
I sort of agree with you, but I just a little tweak on that would be like I don't think that during her campaign that she really didn't present herself well enough. She didn't have um, yeah, maybe she'll if she goes again, maybe she'll do better. Um,
She needs to hit UBI more because not many people knew that I think she caught on
yeah,
late too.
yeah, yeah. I think she was just a little unsure or not well. Trying to think of the word, like not well spoken, or she didn't get through very well. Like Andrew Yang, uh, he kept like he knew what he was going to say every time, every answer, like boom, 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 and it almost got to the point where it's like I'm tired of even listening to him because I know exactly what he's going to say, you know. But he had an answer every time, and it just like okay, well that just makes sense, you know. But she kind of would get off on little tangents, and I don't think she was uh, solidified in her idea like Andrew was, you know. And so Andrew pushed hard against the left, against all the, you know, the shit that was kind of thrown at him. Um,
He was
and
really
even at
unfairly.
first, he kind of was, oh yeah, yeah, but he did push back, and I think that's what people liked about him. I just didn't see that quite with Tulsi. Um, and she did kind of get in. I mean, she got a little conspiratorial, a little bit. And maybe it wasn't conspiracy, but it just the way she kind of presented it, it just seemed kind of conspiracy speech. So I think that was kind of a turnoff for some people.
Yeah, I can see that. I can very much see that.
But I could see past what she was saying. I knew what she was talking about. But, yeah.
I thought she would have made the perfect VP for Yang.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That would have been a ticket because she has the military experience and he has the
Oh yeah,
entrepreneurial experience.
yeah.
So we've touched on all these topics, and I'm wanting to maybe try and wrap it up because you've
Yeah,
given me so much of your time. Thank you. But I want to just one more question to culminate it all. Where do you see the country going over the next 5 years?
Oh man. I don't know if I'm the best person to ask because I I think I thought it wasn't going to be that bad with Trump, and then I thought, oh, what's the worst he could do? Uh, and then yeah, just wow, the last year just blew my mind. Um,
How much of that was Trump and how much of that was the media?
mm, I definitely believe that the media had somewhat to do with it, but man, I, I just watched his speeches. I didn't even have to listen to the media. I just watched him.
I thought he was funny sometimes, but also abrasive
Sometimes,
and offensive.
most of the time, I'm just like, this is just ridiculous. I mean, this guy is just off,
He's
man. Like
not
lies and
presidential.
just what's that?
He's not presidential,
Uh, Definitely not presidential.
but
But
I'm
that
pretty
was
sure he dropped fewer bombs than Obama. So
well, yeah. Um,
it's like, what do you want? A president with decorum or a president that drops fewer bombs?
right, right. Oh, I was adamant, outspoken about Obama's war machine. Like he just
Oh,
kept. He just basically he was not much different. He was just a what was it called, a neoliberal or
yep.
um, yeah. I mean, he was just perpetuating the Bush administration stuff.
It,
He didn't do much for the black community. You know, yeah,
Calling it like you see it. Props. It didn't take Biden very long to resume that effort. It seems. It looks like we're going back into Syria.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, I think that we need to. I think the Democrats or liberals need to really start calling out uh, Biden for his shit. That he's just gonna, I think it's just gonna continue. It's just gonna be like a normal presidency. It's like a normal, like the same old shit, same old show. Um, Although I think we're probably gonna see. I think over the next, would you say 4 or 5 years? Um, it's going to be difficult because of what happened over the election and the last year of Trump. Uh, we're seeing more and more people just speaking past each other and not really. What am I trying to say? Even speaking past each other and not listening to the concerns that they have. I think that's. I think each side like has some legitimate concerns, but it gets lost in all the arguing and the memes. um, yeah,
Um,
it's yeah, I don't know. I think we're probably in the next 5 years.
well, I agree with you. And what I want to wrap up by
Yeah,
saying is thank you, because by having this conversation, you're actively trying to mitigate the potential damage of the future. I'm not saying like I'm like gonna cause damage, but like if other people watch this, that's my goal. That's why
Yeah.
I said at the beginning, my insistence to get this was to assist in other people. But uh, it just you're helping, you're contributing, and that's a very noble and honorable thing to do. Um, so congratulations and thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I'm going to stop recording but not end it. Do you want
Okay.
to say anything else before I stop recording?
Um, I really appreciate you giving me the time and the opportunity to kind of I really like you, Andrew, and I don't want to, it bothers me to have you, angry at me. Um, and so because
Man,
I
I'm
know,
angry at the world, not at you, and I'm sorry that I
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah,
put at you.
it's okay, man, it's okay. And I'm glad for this opportunity that that we've been able to talk and kind of resolve that, hopefully.
I I I I feel access to that love in my heart that I knew was there, but I had said was hard to get. So I
Yeah,
love you. Thank you very much.
I love you, brother.
Thank you. I'm gonna